BMI for age.
How much time duration would you actually spend with the parents and the team to consider whether he really needs to go surgically ahead?
Yes, ma'am, that really is the major ethical concern here. We need to assess the psychology of the adolescent patient themselves, because we need to give them the autonomy to choose for their own procedure, and also inform the parents about all aspects of the surgery, not just the weight loss and improvement of their comorbidities, but also how this procedure would impact other aspects of their life. They do need to be in follow-up for perpetuity for all sorts of complications.
Okay, thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The team, just to note, Team A, there's one more question from one of our judges.
Okay, well presented. I'll just like to ask you, what are some of the common reasons you feel for failure of the surgery or recurrence of obesity after surgery? And what is the rate? You have not mentioned how many people again gain weight after the surgery.
I'm not sure about the exact statistics, sir, but even behavioral modification is a very important factor in that. A lot of patients don't comply with what is advised, and again, it has to do with
excellent. So I think that psychological workup before the surgery
Yes, sir.
is also
Exactly,
important,
sir.
and patient selection. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, thanks.
So if there are no more questions, thank you, Team A.
Thank you.
A huge round of applause for the team, please. Next, we have a very interesting topic, India's Serial Crime Challenge, lessons from the FBI and the roadmap forward. The idea is quite unique, and we are waiting how the team B takes on this topic. May I please welcome the team B to start their technical check.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello, hello,
Hello, hello, hello,
hello,
hello.
hello, hello. Hello, hello,
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
hello, hello, hello.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would tear apart young girls.
Police today found 6 more bodies
under the home of suspected killer John Gacy.
Type chooses his big for a reason. Possession, control, violence.
I'm a power person. I enjoy power. Nobody else had to get to pull off, but I pulled off.
Well, you can be walking down the street, and if Casey lay eyes on you, you have now become his next victim.
The next time you did it, you would be fulfilled. And the next time you did it, you would be fulfilled. Or the next time you did it, you would be fulfilled.
It is 2006. India is a nation bustling with political reforms, social movements, and ever-evolving infrastructure. Times have changed, and half a century after independence, India is ready to get back on her feet, and the people seem happy. But at the same time as this, the residents of Noida are haunted by a terrifying reality. Their children are missing.
It started a few months ago in the Nithari village of Uttar Pradesh, where the first reports of missing children emerged in February. Over the course of next several weeks, more and more children disappeared, and the number grew as high as 30 by December. Rumors of a child kidnapping racket grew larger, but the truth was much more horrifying.
Little did the unsuspecting residents of Noida know that the missing children had been killed on the very night of their disappearance. Sometimes they were raped before, sometimes they were cannibalized after, and sometimes it was both. It wasn't until the body parts started showing up in sewers that an investigation was started. An arm here, a foot there, it was unfathomable. The news spread like wildfire, and suddenly the peaceful, independent India erupted into chaos.
2006 was not the first time an incident like this had occurred, and it certainly wasn't the last. Since time immemorial, our society has been plagued by heinous crimes such as rapes and serial killings. However, our denial to confront this reality is where half the problem lies. In the words of FBI agent Bob Ressler,
we don't know how crazy thinks.
And thus, we chose the topic of criminal psychology, be it the Nithari serial killings in Uttar Pradesh, or the Joshi Abhyankar murders in Pune, or the Raman Raghav slayings in Mumbai. We took it upon ourselves to study every single case we came across. Because in order to better prevent and solve serial crimes, we first needed to understand the methods of these madmen.
Since starting this research, two things have been abundantly clear. One, that heinous crimes are not rare. And two, that this was a previously unexplored territory, not only in Indian medical research, but in Indian research overall. We tried finding if similar studies had been conducted previously so that we could analyze their conclusions. But so far, we have come up empty-handed.
But we could not succeed on our own. For a subject this serious and a project this ambitious, we needed to take inspiration from a nation that had scientifically countered its serial crime problems, and thus we turned to the United States of America.
Starting from the 1950s, the United States had a surge in the discovery of serial killings. Over 2,000 active serial killers were detected in USA during 1950s to 1980s. Individuals like Ted Bundy, Edmund Kemper, and John Wayne Gacy became household names, striking terror into the hearts of American citizens.
But since the 1980s, there has been a steady decrease in serial crimes across America. The USA went from having 800 active serial killers per year to having only 53 presently, and the decline was an astonishing 900% in just 40 years. And the solution? None other than the 1977 Behavioral Analysis Program conducted by the FBI.
this was our starting point. This program was our inspiration, and thus began a research that has spanned over 3 years till now and is further expected to span over a decade. A research that has brought us one step closer to understanding the underlying motives and patterns of these terrifying crimes.
आपको चॉकलेट पसंद है ना?
ये मेरे लिए है?
हाँ बेटा।
Welcome to the Criminal Psychology Symposium, India's Serial Crime Challenge, lessons from the FBI and a roadmap forward.
Why choose this topic? Why study criminal psychology? Because saving lives is not confined to hospital beds alone. It extends to the streets, where the next victim is invisible, and prevention becomes the best cure we can offer.
From FBI agent John Douglas's book Mindhunter, we took the following three as the main goals of our research: crime prevention by identifying early deviant behavior, crime detection by improving surveillance techniques, and crime solving through criminal profiling.
Since almost all serial killers and rapists are psychopaths, we also decided to find a physiological explanation to this condition. This would not only revolutionize the way we look at personality disorders, but also help establish a bridge between physiology and psychology.
Now that we have established a bridge between aims and objectives, let us take a look on our inclusion criteria. The inclusion criteria are serial murders, serial rapes, gang rapes, rape or murder of a minor. The exclusion criteria are murder for self-defense, consensual statutory rape, and marital rape.
Due to the broad nature of our research and the different types of data that had to be collected, we decided to assign different study designs to each aspect of our research. This included three things: an extensive literature review, a global case control study, and a cross-sectional study of Indian criminals whom we would ourselves interview.
Through extensive literature review and research articles, we were able to study the impact of an individual's past and personality on the kind of sexual paraphilias depicted in their crime. We were also able to find two unique scales, PCLR for measuring psychopathy and ACE for the assessment of childhood adversities. These are the gold standards in the assessment of their respective parameters.
But theoretical research was not enough. Our main methodology still lay in interviewing serial killers imprisoned across Maharashtra. We approached the state government and requested that we be allowed to interview criminals convicted of heinous crimes. And the government approved of our proposal.
We have collaborated with several high-ranking individuals and are performing this research under the Joint Secretary of Prisons of Maharashtra, the Principal Secretary of Security and Appeals of the state, Mrs. Radhika Rastogi, as well as the Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Devendra Fadnavis. After more than 2 years of conducting theoretical research on this topic, we are ready to conduct on-ground research, exactly what the FBI did in the 1970s.
Our interview protocol is relatively simple. We do the PCLR and ACE assessment of our subjects along with a separate questionnaire that we created, which includes analyzing their behavior before, during, and after the crime. These three aspects are studied separately at first and then combined for a clearer view of the criminal's mind. And here, the findings from our literature studies gave us an important result.
Our literature review told us that psychopathy is not a product of childhood adversities, but is an inherent condition of mind. This means that a history of abuse, poverty, and assault are predictive of psychopathy in future. In short, the PCLR scale and ACE score are two distinct unrelated entities.
Theoretically, an individual's criminal potential is dependent on both his inherent psychopathy as well as his childhood adversities. In short, criminal potential is a function of an individual's PCLR and ACE scores. Using this, we can formulate a standard equation of linear regression to calculate criminal potential.
However, linear regression assumes that as coefficient varies, the values increase disproportionately. But in case of PCLR and ACE scores, as values increase, criminal potential varies disproportionately.
But the equation was still not complete. If a male and a female had the same PCLR and ACE scores, the equation was calculating the criminal potential to be the same. However, we knew that this was not true. We knew that males commit more crimes than females. Therefore, we had to take into account the gender disparity in committing violent crimes. This would be given by the gender-specific crime ratio, K.
To summarize, the criminal potential of males in an area is always K times that of females in an area, where K is the gender-specific crime ratio. This can also be calculated by multiplying the gender-specific incarceration ratio by the sex ratio. The K for India is 20.4 and for America is 13.26. Using this final equation, we can calculate the criminal potential of any individual numerically, be it a normal person or a criminal, male or female, simply by doing their PCLR and ACE scores.
And this became the basis of our global case control study. Our cases would be serial killers and rapists across the world, and our controls would be normal individuals who have not committed any crimes. We have collected the PCLR and ACE scores for a wide range of subjects, including Indians, Asians, Europeans, and Americans. And the following Gaussian curves were plotted based on this data.
Over 65% of serial killers have been arrested prior to their killing spree for various offenses. Thus, assessing juveniles and small-time criminals with this equation would give us their criminal potential, which would help us to determine their pattern of escalation. Currently, we have set a cutoff of 1238, beyond which an individual is extremely likely to commit heinous crimes. Thus, this ground for bail denial. A lower cutoff of 1000, beyond which a bail can be granted, but the individual should be monitored more closely. This highlights the practical use of our equation.
While there is no firm causation established for psychopathy yet, there are a few interesting theories. Previous research articles have reported increased cortisol amylase and dopamine and decreased serotonin levels in psychopaths. Another interesting role is that of oxytocin, a gene for which codes for gender differences in the amygdala.
Now let us discuss our interventions to proceed beyond criminal spectrum. By collaborating with Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, we have started crime awareness seminars in which we will be sharing our insights about rape prevention and violence de-escalation. This will not only help educate the youth of our nation, but also help them in case they are ever confronted with a serious situation, such as threat of sexual violence or assault.
There is still the crime-solving aspect of our research, for which we have developed criminal profiling models, which include temporality, geography, and several other such parameters. These models have been designed with the view of being used in crime solving once they have been fully developed. However, as of now, we cannot reveal their intricate details since confidentiality remains an essential factor in government refining tools.
We have interviewed 30 heinous criminals imprisoned across Maharashtra. This may not seem like a lot, but there are only 100 criminals in the state fitting our inclusion criteria of heinous crimes. We have already covered 30% of the total possible sample size in just 6 months of getting state approval. Using this, we can extend our spectrum to even mass murderers and terrorists to understand the brainwashing patterns behind these kind of crimes. The data was obtained from Central Jail Amravati, Nagpur, Pune and Mumbai. We'll now be sharing the differences from our interviews illustrating differences between Indian and American serial killers.
These are some of our conclusions from the interviews. Unlike in American cases, rapes in India are not merely an attack on a woman's body. They are more intended to be an attack on her mind and on her status in the society. In the rapist's mind, the victim serves as a surrogate for all of a womankind. The underlying cause for this lies in the extremist ideals and the inherent misogynistic nature of our society. The recent rape murder of a young doctor at Arjikar Medical College, Kolkata is a proof of this.
We have also investigated the underlying causes of pedophilia, and they are as follows. The color and texture of the female reproductive system before puberty is arousing to the criminal. The female reproductive system is tighter and more constricted, thus allowing more pleasure to the criminal. This made us believe that there are underlying causes of sadism and power assertion.
We would now like to illustrate the differences between Indian and foreign killers. Consider the following examples. Nuanced serial killers such as Ted Bundy and Rodney Alcala are more common in developed countries such as the US. However, in India, we would encounter a more aggressive archetype, similar to Andre Chikatilo or Arthur Shawcross. Hence, the question is not, are serial killers common in India? The question is, what kind of serial killers are common in India? And as we continue searching over the next 10 years, hopefully we would be much closer to an answer.
While all the nation looks away from a serial killer, we look into his eyes. We ask the difficult questions and we risk our lives. Because if we don't, then people will keep disappearing and bodies will keep turning up until we become an India that has 100 active serial killers without anyone having a clue about any of them.
Our research unit for detection and resolution of anomalies is not merely a home to undergraduate MBBS students. We are the first team in the history of this nation to study these crimes in such vivid detail. While it is true that India had fallen behind in its study of heinous crimes, we can assure you that that is not the case now.
And although we know we cannot catch all of them, it is no reason to not try. If applied correctly, our research can serve as a foundation for nationwide crime prevention, detection, and solving. In the end, we say only this of our efforts. It takes a candle to march out on the streets in protest and to demand for justice. It takes a flamethrower to shine a light on the darkness and to actually deliver justice. And we intend to deliver justice. We will work towards stopping these crimes. We will work towards catching these criminals. And we will work towards protecting our victims, no matter what the cost may be. Because if there's one thing that's been made clear to us, it is this. The situation with regards to deviant psychology in India is a lot more terrifying than we initially assumed.
Team B has covered the topic very comprehensively. I now request the judges for any questions to the team.
So, I must compliment for a very nice presentation. Just one little query. Your PCLR score, how did you make sure your interviewer bias was taken care of? It's a scale of 0, 1, 2, I guess?
Yes, sir. So, thank you for your question, sir. So, the interviewer bias is also one thing we have to consider. The another is that the prisoners we are interviewing are all pathological liars. So, they never tell the truth the first time you interview them. The FBI recommends a minimum of 5 interviews after like proper rapport setting for them to tell you the truth. All the cases that we considered have at least been interviewed 7 times. And even after that, we accommodate for an error of ±3 in our PCLR scores, ±3.
Very nice. Secondly, how do you intend using this entire research methodology for crime prevention? You made a statement, probably you'll be using it for crime prevention.
So thank you for your question, sir. So crime prevention, basically we have PCLR scores. So if we use PCLR and ACE to diagnose for psychopathy in already convicted prisoners, so we can grant them bail or not grant them bail on the basis of that. So that is so that they do not get released and then commit more crimes. That is one aspect of it. And the children or adolescents who are at risk of psychopathy or being criminals ahead in the future, we can also use PCLR for the same.
Yes.
And the graph.
Sir, I'd like to add to what my colleague said. For example, there is somebody in a prison who has committed assault. He has not committed serial rape yet. So I can take his PCLR score, ACE score, I can calculate his criminal potential. As of now, if his criminal potential is beyond 1238, that is very, very likely that he will go outside and commit some heinous crime. He should be ideally denied bail. If it's between 931 and 1238, then he can be bailed, but it should be monitored closely. We have undercover agents who can monitor these kind of people. If it's below 931, he won't most likely commit any other crime and he can rehabilitate. So that.
Thank you so much. If there are no questions, a round of applause for the presenters.
One moment. Just
okay.
one comment. The map that you had shown, it showed the wrong boundaries for India, so you should be careful about that.
Yes. Sorry, sir. We will take it into account next time.
Thank you, Team B. Now, Team C is requested to be on stage. The topic is linked between disorder sleep and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Recognizing and addressing sleep health as a part of metabolic care is essential for effective prevention and long-term disease management. Now we request Team C to start their presentation.
Team C, your time for tech check starts now.
Hello. Hello.
In the stillness of night, the body fights. Disordered sleep fuels restless nights. A cycle formed, unseen, untold, when insulin falters and sugar unfolds.
Sleep's embrace, a fleeting thing. As glucose rises, its silent sting. A restless mind, a weary soul. Each condition taking its toll.
Heal the sleep, the sugar may fall. Tame the sugar, and peace may call. For in the dance of dark and light lie silent battles fought each night.
This is the story of when sleep and sugar collide. This is the bidirectional axis. Chatur was 33, healthy, active, no family history of diabetes. After a stressful period and some minor health inconvenience, he developed restless nights, loud snoring, exhaustion, and relentless thirst. His sugar was checked, 620 milligrams per deciliter. The cause?
Obstructive sleep apnea, fueling inflammation and insulin resistance. But early intervention, strict sleep hygiene, dietary changes, and movement reversed it. Within weeks, his sugar levels normalized. In just 2 months, he shed 8 kilograms. He was awake and alive again.
But not everyone gets a second chance. Bhola was 38, a father, a husband. Years of untreated choking and gasping sleep led to creeping high blood sugar levels. He was diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea and pre-diabetes, but without enough lifestyle changes, his heart gave out. At 40, he lost his life, a loss that shattered his young family.
2 men, 2 choices, 2 very different endings.
The World Health Organization, through its ICD-11 classification, defines disordered sleep as conditions characterized by difficulties in initiating or maintaining sleep, excessive sleepiness, respiratory disturbances during sleep, disruption in the sleep-wake cycle, abnormal movements during sleep, and problematic behaviors or physiological events that occur while falling asleep, during sleep, and upon waking.
Type 2 diabetes mellitus is a chronic metabolic disorder characterized by insulin resistance and significant insulin deficiency, leading to hyperglycemia, which causes much known micro and macrovascular complication. But little does people know that disordered sleep is also one of its complications.
Sleep affects diabetes. Diabetes affects sleep. Sounds like a vicious cycle. But how deep does the rabbit hole go? Let's take you through what we discovered when we looked at both ends of this entangled link. We were beyond intrigued and decided to delve deeper into this topic by conducting a systematic review of the literature available.
Our aim is to discuss the impact of disordered sleep on type 2 diabetes mellitus, examine how diabetes-related complications contribute to poor sleep quality, and finally, evaluate the effectiveness of sleep-focused interventions in improving diabetic control. Through this, we hope to highlight the importance of integrating sleep management into diabetes care.
We included observational studies, randomized control trials, and cross-sectional analysis that reported parameters such as insulin resistance, HbA1c, fasting glucose, and diabetes prevalence. We excluded case reports, animal studies, and researches focusing solely on type 1 or pediatric diabetes. Our primary outcome was to establish how the impact of sleep disorder on insulin sensitivity, diabetes progression, and glucose metabolism. Our secondary outcome were to explore the effects of cortisol, melatonin, circadian rhythm, as well as inflammation, and effect of interventions such as CPAP, CBT, and lifestyle changes on glycemic control.
Our source was PubMed, focusing on the studies from the past 15 years, including human subjects and published in English. Our keywords used were disordered sleep, type 2 diabetes mellitus, obstructive sleep apnea, and insulin resistance.
Initially, 146 articles were screened, and out of these, 74 articles were identified. After screening more abstracts, titles, and full text, 46 of these articles were excluded based on irrelevance or failure to meet our inclusion or exclusion criteria. The remaining 28 articles were used in the full systemic review. Our review synthesized data from these 28 articles that evaluated the pathological overlap between disordered sleep and type 2 diabetes mellitus, with a predominant focus on glycemic markers, insulin resistance, and diabetic prevalence.
Sleep is not merely a state of passive rest, but a regulator of metabolic functioning. When sleep is insufficient, fragmented, or disrupted, especially in the case of obstructive sleep apnea, leads to intermittent hypoxia, which thereby leads to insulin resistance, rise in cortisol level, and systematic inflammation. Thus, this is the pathogenesis of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Type 2 diabetes mellitus impairs the quality of sleep by neuropathy, nocturia, and circadian disturbances. This bidirectional link between disordered sleep and type 2 diabetes mellitus forms a vicious cycle.
Physiological findings from all the included studies supported these mechanisms. Several showed altered leptin-adiponectin ratios, elevated interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha levels, and heightened sympathetic tone, all contributing to metabolic dysregulation. Elevated HOMA-IR levels were noted in 21 out of the 28 studies, with OSA patients showing significantly higher insulin resistance as compared to controls. Fasting plasma glucose was assessed in 19 studies, most showing 10 to 25 milligram per deciliter increase in OSA patients, irrespective of obesity. HbA1c data from 22 studies showed that untreated, moderate to severe OSA patients showed sustained elevated HbA1c markers, irrespective of being obese or of weight loss. This indicates early and sustained insulin and glucose dysregulation.
Regarding prevalence, 11 studies found co-occurrence between OSA and type 2 diabetes mellitus. One study found OSA to be present in more than 50% of diabetic individuals. Two longitudinal studies found OSA to be an independent risk factor for type 2 diabetes mellitus, while adjusting for BMI, age, and sex. Notably, the risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus increased with OSA severity.
Interventional studies reveal that CPAP therapy has been improving metabolic outcomes in sleep apnea patients. 7 RCTs and randomized controlled trials showed that decrease in HbA1c level from 0.3% to 1.1% in patients using CPAP therapy consistently for 3 to 6 months. Some research papers also showed a decrease in fasting plasma glucose up to 12 milligram per deciliter and an increase in HOMA-IR levels in almost all the study papers.
These benefits were independent of weight loss, suggesting that the metabolic improvements seen were due to reversal of intermittent hypoxia and sleep fragmentation. Some studies also observed that there was a reduction in metabolic and oxidative parameters post-CPAP therapy, further signifying its important clinical role.
CPAP remains the primary treatment for obstructive sleep apnea. CBTI is known to reduce the sleep onset by 19% and increase sleep efficiency by 10%. Sleep education is known to increase sleep duration by 42 minutes per night. Lifestyle changes remains essential. Losing 5 to 10% of your body weight is known to decrease the severity of OSA, and 30 minutes of daily walking is known to decrease the prevalence of type 2 diabetes mellitus by 58%. Together, these interventions are known to decrease the prevalence of both type 2 diabetes mellitus and obstructive sleep apnea.
One of the most impactful studies of our systematic review was by Martinez Serron et al. In 2016, a randomized controlled trial assessing the effectiveness of CPAP therapy on glycemic controls in patients with obstructive sleep apnea and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Over a 6-month period, the study showed excessive reduction in HbA1c levels, up to 1.1%, alongside marked improvement in insulin sensitivity independent of weight loss. Metabolic benefits were more pronounced in patients who had high CPAP adherence. The study showed a low risk of bias based on the Cochrane risk of bias tool and received a JDED score of 5, indicating significantly strong methodological quality.
We didn't stop here and went further with a retrospective study in collaboration with the Department of Pulmonary Medicine, Amrita Hospital, Faridabad. Our objective was to establish correlation between diabetes prevalence and severity trends of OSA in patients diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea using polysomnograms. A comparative analysis was conducted by reviewing 21 polysomnograms to evaluate the association between apnea-hypopnea index, HbA1c, BMI, and age to evaluate the potential metabolic implications of disordered sleep.
For consistency, we categorize the sleep apnea severity according to the thresholds of AHI criterion. This helps us to categorize patients and analyzing trends and patterns. This table gives us the mean key health metrics. The mean age of the patients were up to about 56 years, which indicates a higher risk factor for diabetes and sleep disorders. A mean BMI of 36.45 kg per meter square gives us that most of the patients were moderately obese. AHI levels of 24.67 suggest moderate sleep apnea, and HbA1c levels of 6.15% gives that the patient are mostly pre-diabetic and are already having metabolic dysfunction. Our study didn't show any significant relation between HbA1c with age and BMI.
What's striking about this graph is the positive trend. As AHI increases, HbA1c also tends to rise. This can be quantitatively supported by the Pearson correlation coefficient, which has a value of 0.65. This means that there is a moderate to strong positive correlation between AHI and HbA1c, which means that patients with more severe sleep apnea are at a higher risk of poor glucose metabolism, which is an important clinical insight.
While HbA1c is known to show a very significant relationship with BMI and age, but our cross-sectional analysis did not show an association with either of the variables. This lower association is likely due to the limited sample size and higher baseline prevalence of OSA in the participants. Our study does show a significant relationship between HbA1c and AHI, which underscores the link between glycemic status and severity of OSA and further warrants the further investigation in larger cohorts.
Our systematic review as well as our retrospective study give a significance of a strong association between type 2 diabetes mellitus and sleep apnea on the basis of overlapping pathophysiological mechanisms like insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, and hormonal dysregulation. The consistency in elevated glycemic levels and HbA1c in patients suffering from OSA, as well as our observed positive correlation between AHI and HbA1c levels, further strengthens the argument that there should be an integration and routine metabolic checkups in patients with disordered sleep and vice versa.
These findings are a clinical wake-up call. Sleep should no longer be seen under the eyes of sleep medicine and diabetes just as an endocrine disorder. We urge the healthcare providers to adopt an integrated screening protocol like evaluating diabetes in sleep patient and sleep studies in diabetic patient. This will lead to early diagnosis, prompt treatment, and prevention of long-term complications. Every restless night, every gasped breath,
every ignored alarm of exhaustion, they quietly write the future. But here's the hope. We can interrupt that story.
With vigilance, with intervention, with education, with compassion.
We often think of diabetes as a disease of sugar, a disease of the pancreas.
But maybe we've been looking in the wrong place. Maybe the first spark doesn't ignite in your blood. Maybe diabetes doesn't start in your pancreas. It might just start on your pillow.
Thank you.
Very nice presentation, and this causative and effective relationship between OST and diabetes is quite a very, very important and relevant topic in these days. And now the house is open for the questions from the judges.
Very nicely presented and a very, very pertinent subject. Everybody is going through sleep disturbances. But I would like to know, out of the 21 polysomnographs that you have evaluated in Amrita, anybody